Good morning. Welcome to the Heritage Foundation and our Lewis Lehrman Auditorium. We, of course, welcome those who join us on our heritage.org website on all of these occasions. Would ask everyone here in-house if you'll be so kind to make that last courtesy check that your cell phones have been turned off. It is appreciated by those recording the events as well as those speaking publicly. We will, of course, post the program on the Heritage homepage following today's activities. And we remind our internet viewers that they're welcome to send questions or comments at any time, simply emailing us at speaker@heritage.org. Hosting our program is Ambassador Terry Miller, who serves as director of our Center for Data Analysis and the Center for Trade and Economics. He is also the Mark A. Kolokotronis Fellow in Economic Freedom. He directs our ongoing research into the role of free markets and trade in economic growth here and around the world, and oversees the production of Heritage's annual Index of Economic Freedom. Prior to joining us here, he was a diplomat and public servant with assignments at the United Nations Economic and Social Council, the Department of State, as well as overseas duty in Italy, France, Barbados, and New Zealand. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Terry Miller. Terry.
Thank you, John. I had the great privilege this year of visiting the Philippines. We knew from the research that we do in connection with the Index of Economic Freedom that some very good things were going on in the Philippines. We had seen the score in our index for the Philippines rise from 54.7 up to 62.2. That's a 7.5-point increase in just a decade. And the Philippines had moved up in the rankings to number 76. And there had been really an uninterrupted growth in their economic freedom score. So I knew that good things were happening in the country, but I did want to see it for myself, and I certainly did. It was very impressive to see that the economic growth that was taking place, the dynamism of the economy. Obviously, there are things still to be done, but clearly there was leadership in place that was moving the country in the right direction. Well, today we have two of those leaders with us to speak about the country. In fact, we have two renowned and respected central bankers from the Republic of the Philippines. One's the current governor of the central bank, and one is his predecessor. So that's really quite a combination. His Excellency Jose Lampa Quisia Jr. has been ambassador of the Philippines to the United States since April 2011. Ambassador Quisia's first 24 months in Washington, D.C. have been dedicated to promoting trade and investment opportunities in the Philippines. They've been dedicated to strengthening the military and security alliance between our two countries and providing assistance to Philippine nationals while further cementing the already robust and very friendly relationship between our two countries. Together with his wife, Maria Victoria Jose, Ambassador Quisia has been actively promoting Philippine culture in Washington, especially among the young Filipino-American community. Ambassador Quisia has over 10 years of experience in public service. He served as the governor of the Central Bank of the Philippines and chairman of its monetary board, among other positions. At the Central Bank, Ambassador Quisia oversaw the liberalization of foreign exchange controls, resulting in, among other things, the entry of more substantial foreign direct investment into the Philippines. And that investment strengthened the Philippine peso and the country's foreign exchange reserves. Ambassador Quisia is a recipient of numerous awards and accolades. In 2011, he received the Joseph Horton Lifetime Achievement Award from the Horton Club of Washington, D.C. He was the first Filipino to receive such an award. He was the 2007 Management Man of the Year of the Management Association of the Philippines in 2007. Now, our other guest is the Honorable Armando M. Titanco, Jr. He's the governor of the Philippines Central Bank. He assumed office as governor for a 6-year term on July 4th, 2005. And he was reappointed by the president for a second 6-year term commencing July 4th, 2011. As governor, he serves as chairman of the Monetary Board, which is the principal monetary policy body. He's also chairman of the Anti-Money Laundering Council. A career central banker, Governor Tatanko has been in the service of the central bank for 4 decades. Before his appointment as governor, he was deputy governor in charge of the banking services sector, the economic research, and the treasury of the central bank. He also served as an alternate executive director of the International Monetary Fund in Washington in the 1990s. Governor Tatanko is credited with strengthening the bank's ability to promote growth and stability through its policies concerning monetary policy, banking, and the payment system. Governor Tatanko studied economics and business administration at the Ateneo de Manila University. He finished his MA in Public Policy and Administration with a concentration in Development Economics at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, right here in the United States. So we're going to start off our event this morning with Ambassador Quisia, and I would ask that you please join me in welcoming him to the podium now. Ambassador?
Thank you, Ambassador Miller. Thank you for your kind introduction. And I have to confess that there must have been some misunderstanding. I thought that I would introduce the governor, but you have already done so. Let me just add a few things. But before I start, Ambassador Terry Miller, Director for Data Analysis and the Center for Trade and Economics. Of course, our guest of honor, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor, Armando Tatanko Jr., officers and directors of the Heritage Foundation, members of the U.S.-Philippine Society, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon or good morning to all of you. It is, of course, a pleasure to see a lot of familiar faces in the audience today. And I want to thank the Heritage Foundation for inviting our guest of honor today, who I have known for quite some time. And I am convinced that the transformation of the Philippine banking system and the Philippine economy has to a large extent can be credited to our guest of honor today, who has been a very effective central banker. And as I said, I've known him for some time. I met him about 25 years ago when I came to the central bank as the new governor in February 1990. And he was then a young economist who, at the age of early 30s, in his early 30s, was then already director of the Economic Research Unit of the Bangko Sentral. And I got to know him quite well after about a few years. And I was impressed by his intellectual capacity, his articulateness, his pleasing personality. So when the opportunity arose, I nominated him to be our candidate for the alternate executive director's position at the International Monetary Fund, where he served for about 2 years, from 1992 to 1994. Shortly after coming back from the Washington, D.C., he assumed a more important position, became managing director of the bank, and then he moved on to become a deputy governor, as Ambassador Terry Miller said. Became deputy governor for the banking services, economic research, and treasury departments, overseeing those very important departments within the central bank. As Ambassador Miller has said too, that Governor Tatanko has been credited with strengthening the BSP's ability to promote growth and stability through its policies concerning monetary, banking, and the payment system. Among others, the Philippines has achieved the ideal convergence of higher economic growth and low inflation. As an example, in 2014, the BSP expanded by 6.1% amidst an average inflation rate of about 4.1%. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I think Governor Tatanco and the Monetary Board, which he chairs, have been very effective in keeping a manageable inflation rate amidst the very high growth that we achieved. As you probably recall, we achieved a 7.2% GDP growth rate in 2013 and 6.8% in 2012. And despite very high growth, inflation was kept at manageable levels. During Governor Tatanco's term, the Philippines has made significant progress in promoting a more inclusive financial system, and the Philippine banking system has become well capitalized and supportive of an expanding economy, while the payment and settlement system remains safe, efficient, and a source of confidence in the growing financial system. At the same time, a strong external position from current account surpluses and ample international reserves provides cushion from possible shocks in the economy or to the economy. Under his leadership, the Bangko Sentral Filipinas financial education initiatives were deepened through the establishment of the BSP's Economic and Financial Learning Program, or EFLP, a comprehensive nationwide campaign targeting key audiences. The ELP rationale is that a citizenry that is well informed in economics and finance is a more effective partner in maintaining the effectiveness of monetary policy, as well as in ensuring a stronger and safer banking and payment system. He also established economic and financial learning centers in the various regions of the country to serve as primary access point for the public to gather economic and financial information. Governor Tatanco has been consistently rated by Global Finance as one of the world's best governors, central bank governors, named by the Banker as Central Banker of the Year for Asia Pacific, voted Emerging Markets Central Bank Governor of the Year for Asia, and awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award for Communications Excellence by the International Association of Business Communications in the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct privilege to introduce our speaker, the Honorable Amando M. Tatanco, Governor of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be introduced by a former boss. Of course, I have a lot to say about him also. And I hope I'll find an opportunity to do that sometime in the near future. But let me first say that it's a great pleasure for me today. And I thank the Heritage Foundation, particularly Ambassador Terry Miller, for inviting me here to give a presentation on the transformation of the Philippine economy. The outline of my presentation is shown on the screen. So I'll first start with the solid macroeconomic performance of the economy, and then I'll look at the structural reforms that have been implemented. I'll take a longer-term perspective and look at the reforms that have been put in place since the 1980s, and then go to the challenges that we face and the measures that we have taken and that we're prepared to take to address these challenges. And lastly, I will give you a picture of what we see in terms of the outlook for the Philippine economy. Let me begin by first describing the macroeconomic performance of the Philippines. This chart shows that the ASEAN countries have been growing. If you look at the chart, this performance is broken down into 10-year periods from 1980 to 89, 90 to 99, 2000 to 2009, and then the 2010 to up to 2014 period, the latest period available. Now, you will recall that in each of these periods, there were clearly identifiable crises that were experienced in that part of the world. In the 1980s, for instance, we saw the Mexican debt crisis spill over to our shores in terms of foreign exchange difficulties that we experienced that led to the declaration of a debt moratorium by the Philippine government in 1983. In fact, I'll just correct or the statement of Ambassador Quisia slightly. I actually met him before he became governor of the central bank. I met him when he was the administrator of the Social Security system. He was then tapped in the second half of the 1980s. He was tapped by President Aquino to give advice, to provide advice to the debt negotiating team of the government. You recall, Mr. Ambassador, that Jobo Fernandez was the central bank governor at that time, and Ting Jaime was the Secretary of Finance. And we would see you in New York in the course of the debt negotiations. But, that's a long time ago. And the situation in the Philippines now is very different. And I'll demonstrate that as we move along. In the 1980s, we also experienced the U.S. stock market crash in 1987. And then in the 1990s, there was the Asian foreign exchange crisis, which occurred 97, 98, to be specific. And this brought significant difficulties to many countries in the region. And I will talk also a little bit about that later. In the new millennium, there was the 2007 U.S. subprime crisis, which later transformed into the European debt crisis that led to what we now call the global financial crisis, the worst since the 1930s. Now, these are basically 10-year cycles, and I see that at least some of the people in the room are probably veterans, or at least have some idea about those crises. The patterns in the chart are clear. The green and the blue bars are dropping off, so they're declining. This is in terms of the average GDP growth of selected ASEAN economies. And the yellow bars are on a roller coaster, while the red bars representing the Philippines are steadily rising. What's interesting to note is that in the Philippine economy, we've been registering positive growth rates for 64 consecutive quarters now, from the first quarter of 1999 to the fourth quarter of 2014. We have not only outperformed our own historical record, but we have also registered one of the fastest growth rates among emerging markets in Asia. At an average GDP growth of 6.3% for 2010 to 2014, we have now outpaced GDP growth rate of the ASEAN 5, which during this period was registered at 5.5%. Here's another interesting chart. Um, this is a situation when the bars of the charts are rising or falling as you'd want them to. For instance, real GDP growth is rising. The inflation rate is falling. The current account surplus is going up. And the general government debt as a percent of GDP is going down. So it's akin to a positive alignment of the stars, so to speak. This alignment is probably the reason why I've been dubbed the bright spot by various institutions like the New York Times, Standard Chartered, S&P, and Moody's. Some have even called us Asia's rising tiger. That's the World Bank. This is reminiscent of the tag East Asian Miracle that was spoken of for Asian neighbors earlier. But this performance of the Philippine economy over the last 4 decades has been anything but a miracle. Ladies and gentlemen, the positive performance of the Philippine economy over the last 4 decades has been the result of a long history of structural reforms and careful macroeconomic management. In this slide and the next one, I've listed a few of the most important reforms we now have in place. These reforms were meant to open up closed or highly regulated sectors of the economy, such as the oil industry, telecommunications, airlines, water, and power, so that we could take advantage of the growing competitive environment as markets have become increasingly more integrated and interconnected. They were also expected to improve the capital market in order to increase the options for fundraising, create vehicles to appropriately price and transfer non-performing assets so as to reduce, if not eliminate, the burden of resolution on government, institute good governance and anti-corruption measures, and promote efficiency, transparency, and accountability in the use of government resources. At the same time, they are designed to enhance long-term fiscal sustainability and empower the economy to leverage of technology. In other words, these reforms were to help create an environment where market solutions can flourish. Let me focus a little bit on the reforms that were or that are most relevant to central banking or to the BSP mandate. The Special Purpose Vehicle Act of 2002. This was passed in response to the effects of the Asian foreign exchange crisis in the late 1990s. The law aimed to develop and maintain a sound financial sector for the country by providing the legal, regulatory, and taxation framework for banks and other financial institutions for selling non-performing and acquired assets and improving the liquidity of the financial system, which can be harnessed to propel economic growth. See, unlike the other countries in the region, the government did provide massive bailout programs for failing financial institutions. What the government did, together with the legislature, was to pass this Special Purpose Vehicle Act that provided tax concessions to the sale of non-performing assets by the banks to help repair the balance sheets of the bank and put them in a position that will allow them to lend to the productive sectors of the economy. The second important piece of legislation was the act liberalizing the entry and scope of operations of foreign banks in the Philippines. This is the first liberalization. Later on, I'll talk about the latest liberalization of the banking industry in the Philippines. But in 1994, this was passed to provide that foreign banks may operate in the Philippines with by acquiring, purchasing, or owning up to 60% of the voting stock of the existing domestic bank. That's the first mode. Another mode would be by investing in up to 60% of the voting stock of a new banking subsidiary incorporated under the laws of the Philippines. And the third one was to establish a fully owned foreign bank branch with the full banking authority. Now, through this law, 10 foreign banks were put up in the Philippines in the 1990s. And in addition to that, there were also a number of bank subsidiaries that were established. Now, what is not shown in the screen is another important law that was passed in 1993 and became effective in 1994. And that is the amendment to the Central Bank Act. This amendment, this law, which is called the new Central Bank Act, provides independence to the central bank in terms of fiscal as well as administrative autonomy. It also defines the primary mandate of the central bank as that of maintaining price stability conducive to a sustained and balanced growth of the economy. The governor, as well as the members of the monetary board, were given fixed 6-year terms, and the terms that coincide with the political calendar of the country. And I would say that the person who was behind this, who really pushed the passage of this new Central Bank Act, was no other than Ambassador Jose Quisia, who's here with us today. He had to work very hard to convince Congress. As we all know, legislators are not easy to convince. So he had to work double time to have this law passed by Congress. Now, the reform agenda has continued and has even strengthened between 2010 and 2014. And the chart shows the other reforms that have been implemented over the last 4 years. These measures would include the passage of the act allowing the full entry of foreign banks. I mentioned earlier that under the 1994 law, foreign equity can have a maximum limit or have a limit of 60% of voting stock. In this new law, foreign equity can go up to 100% of the voting stock. So the ceiling on ownership of foreign banks has been raised to 100% from 60%. At the same time, there has also been a liberalization of the branching requirements, and this law has allowed foreign banks to participate in foreclosure proceedings of real estate properties. That's been an important consideration because, as you know, there are still limits on land ownership, restrictions on foreign land ownership in the Philippines. With capital infusion and market presence, the expectation is that the law would bolster the local banking industry through greater competition and the benefits from the transfer of skills and technology. Now, this liberalization of the entry of foreign banks also positions us well for the banking integration framework in ASEAN. But more than just that, we have also pursued and supported these legislative initiatives because a competitively and globally oriented banking industry is an essential portal for foreign investments. Just to give you an update, since this law was passed last year, we have approved the application of 3 foreign banks to operate in the Philippines. 1 Japanese, 1 Korean, and 1 Taiwanese. We are at the same time now currently evaluating the application of several other foreign banks that want to establish either a branch or subsidiary in the Philippines. Now, given all of this, the economic performance, the reforms that have been instituted, we can say so far so good. Or is it too good to be true? Well, the question is, can the momentum for reform and positive transformation be sustained over time? What are the near-term external and domestic challenges that confront us? Now, let me just say a few things about the challenges that we see. On the external side, the IMF still sees unevenness in global growth. However, in its most recent World Economic Outlook release, the IMF describes the outlook for advanced economies as improving relative to last year. The momentum in U.S. growth, of course, will play an important part in this outlook if this is to materialize. The IMF has projected the U.S. economy to grow by 3.3% this year, an upward revision of 0.2% from their last WEO release. And this has benefited from steady job creation, improved confidence, and lower oil prices. Now, the growth projections for the EU and Japan are also somewhat better. For the EU, the forecast is now 1.4% in 2015 and 1.6% in 2016. For Japan, growth is seen at 1% and 1.2% in 2015 and 2016, respectively. Now, what about the emerging markets? Where growth in the emerging markets is expected to somewhat slow down. In China, for instance, growth is seen to decline to 6.8% in 2015 and 6.3% in 2016. Even as these are downward projections of 0.25 and 0.5 percentage points, owing to weakening investments, these levels are seen to be more manageable over the medium term. Among the ASEAN 4, growth is expected to diverge with the Philippines' growth forecast raised to 6.8% for this year. It's ASEAN 4 because the IMF took out Singapore from the group. Now, another risk on the external side is the path of oil prices. We've all seen the decline in oil prices. While lower oil prices have helped to keep inflation low and prop economic growth through consumption in oil importing countries, a sudden reversal could create market volatilities that could, have adverse effects on certain economies. So that's another risk factor. The Philippines is fortunate to be in a position where it is expected to benefit the most based on the studies of certain analysts, to benefit the most from lower oil prices. The third risk is financial market volatility, arising from a further strengthening of the US dollar, the misappreciation by the market of the guidance from monetary authorities and central banks of advanced economies, particularly the Fed, and geopolitical concerns. It's interesting. This is something that we closely monitor as a central bank, how financial markets react to statements coming out of the Fed. You'll recall that in the last statement, the word patient was dropped. But in a succeeding statement, it was clarified that any increase in interest rates would be gradual and most likely to be shallow. So the markets read all of this and they react accordingly. As you know, market behavior is such that they react to news first, right? And then when the actual event happens, markets react again. So they react at least twice. And this is causing some volatility in financial markets, which we need to monitor very closely, particularly on the foreign exchange market, the bond market, and the equity market. On the domestic front, we have natural disasters, delays in infrastructure projects, in other words, government underspending. Although the government is really pushing spending now. In fact, an administrative order has just been issued that is aimed at facilitating and hastening the rollout of projects and the implementation of infrastructure projects. And then the thin power reserves. The government is also addressing that through a number of energy measures that we can talk about a little later. Now, in terms of the natural disasters, perhaps I would, at this point, thank, on behalf of our countrymen, all those that have helped us and extended aid, provided other types of support for those who were affected by Typhoon Haiyan, which hit the country in the fourth quarter of 2013. So thank you very much to all of you for that. Now, we are mindful of all of these challenges, the external as well as the domestic challenges. Nevertheless, we're confident that just as we had weathered all the crises over the last 4 decades, we believe that we have the capacity to address the challenges that confront us at the moment. Think about Manny Pacquiao, right? Whose long-awaited match with Floyd Mayweather is set in a few weeks. I believe it's May 2, 9 o'clock Eastern Time and 6 o'clock Pacific Time. Okay. Boxers, when they prepare for a fight, have a deliberate plan that is based on careful, thorough scanning of their opponent's moves, the weaknesses, the strengths. And they have a thoughtful preparation for a fight strategy. The moves, the punches, the footsteps, all of these are studied during training. They do all of this in the hope that they would give them the victory. Now, each time, they also build up their physique so they could compete in more and more difficult circumstances. All the time, they would have the mental fortitude of a winner. It's the same frame of mind that motivates our reforms. The same mindset why BSP maintains prudent, proactive, and preemptive monetary policy, banking, and external policies. We know that if we are to become a bigger and stronger economy, we must not only roll with the punches, but we must also be strong to overcome the punches and even throw a few against the opponents. We must protect our sources of resilience. So in the next few slides, I'd like to quickly go over some of these sources of resilience for the Philippine economy. First, economic growth is becoming broader based. Manufacturing is picking up. Infrastructure is also expected to remain strong as PPP projects continue to be rolled out. The BPO sector is expected to remain robust. Potential output is also on the rise. IMF estimates the country's potential output at between 6 and 6.25%. This view is supported by a brewing production efficiency and robust labor market dynamics. You'll see in the chart that total factor productivity is increasing. So we're generating more growth than what the measured inputs would suggest. This is consistent with a drop in the ICOR, in the incremental capital output ratio. So we need less capital input for a certain amount of expansion in the economy. Second, we have been able to keep the economy growing in a low inflation environment. This is our main mandate at the central bank. The slide shows us how inflation has moved over the period. Except for a brief spike in 2008 due to supply-side factors that raised food prices. The slide shows that inflation in the Philippines has been stable and declining. In fact, we've been able to keep the inflation rate within the government's target range for the last 6 consecutive years. See, the Bangko Sentral is an inflation targeter. We determine an inflation target for the period. And we try to achieve that through the use of policy instruments. The inflation target is agreed upon with the rest of government. So there's ownership by all government agencies involved. But the implementation and the pursuit of that target rests solely with the central bank. And in our case, the policy interest rate is the main instrument, the main tool for achieving the inflation target. Now, in 2015, inflation has so far averaged 2.4%. So that's from January to March, 2.4%. Again, this is well within the 2 to 4% target for the year. The 2 to 4% target has been set for this year, next year, and 2017, even 2018. We see that this is consistent with the longer-term disinflation path in the Philippine economy. And at this point in time, given actual performance and given expectations about the future path of inflation, we believe that the stance of monetary policy, the current stance of monetary policy, is appropriate. There is no urgency to modify the stance of monetary policy at this point. Now, I believe that part of the success in inflation targeting has been the credibility and the transparency that we have built, especially since we migrated into an inflation targeting monetary policy regime in 2002. The inflation targeting framework is based, as you probably know, on very disciplined and balanced analysis of the results of surveillance of both global and domestic developments. That's why we showed the challenges that we face. Using this analysis, the Banco Central provides market guidance through calibrated monetary policy actions and appropriate communication to the market. In addition, the BSP, or the Central Bank of the Philippines, has expanded its toolkit beyond the policy interest rate to now include other measures, particularly macroprudential measures. Since the GFC, traditional central banking is no longer sufficient to address the challenges facing monetary authorities. As we all know, even the advanced economies have resorted to unconventional measures like QE, QE1, QE2, QE3, right? And in Europe, they have the equivalent of QE as well, just like in Japan as part of their three-arrow approach to restoring sustainable growth in the economy. In our case, we continue to use the policy interest rate as the main tool, but this is also complemented by other tools, particularly macroprudential measures. Macroprudential measures basically target possible stress points that can affect financial stability in the economy. Okay, and the implementation of such measures has allowed us to effectively target such brewing pressures in certain pockets of the market that could cause some, destabilization. Pressures that otherwise would have been exacerbated if we only had interest rates as a tool to counter them. Take, for instance, capital flows. As we all know, because of the developments in the advanced economies, the significant drop in interest rates, as well as the slower economic performance, there's been a migration of capital from advanced economies to emerging market economies. Now, traditional central banking would have said to control the impact of those flows on domestic liquidity, to maintain a liquidity level that is appropriate for your growth and price objectives, you have to raise interest rates. So you control money supply. But if you do that, you will attract more capital flows, right? And therefore, you're probably back to square one, if not worse. So other tools have to be used. I'll give you an example. In the case of the Philippines, we noticed that there was an increase in the volume of non-deliverable forwards because investors were betting that the Philippine peso was going to appreciate. And this led to significant inflows of foreign exchange and an appreciation of the exchange rate. Right? To counter that, we did not close the non-deliverable forward facility that banks were continued to be able to engage in NDF transactions, but we increased the capital charge for their outstanding NDF positions. So, because there's a certain element of additional risk that is associated with NDFs. So we said, if you want to do it, you can still do it, but you have to set aside more capital for that. The effect was NDF started to go down, and this reduced the pressure for an appreciation of the local currency. We also manage the inflow of funds through the investment management accounts. These investment management accounts of the central bank are meant to siphon off liquidity in the system. But because of positive interest rate differentials between the Philippines and some foreign countries, particularly advanced economies, and the expectation of strengthening of the currency, these investment management accounts became a vehicle for investors to put in more money into the country. So it basically generated more liquidity, when in fact the objective was to control liquidity, siphon off liquidity from the system. So we said we put restrictions like foreigners can come in but not invest in the investment management account. Real property sector. There have been questions about what's the status, what's the real score there. Well, there's been an increase in asset prices. There's been an increase in lending to the property sector by banks. But we believe that all of this continues to be manageable. We don't see any clear evidence of an asset bubble in the property sector. But to be able to maintain that condition, we have sent a strong signal to the market about the risks of lending to the property sector. We adopted two measures which could be classified under macroprudential. One, we expanded the definition of real estate exposure. So it would include not only loans, but also things like investments in securities, in bonds of real estate companies. That's the first one, expansion of the definition, make it more comprehensive. The second is we have adopted REST, R-E-S-T, Real Estate Stress Test, and have required the banks to stress their balance sheets against a 25% write-off in the real estate exposures and see how that's going to affect their capital position. If the capital position goes below the minimum of 10%, banks have to explain to us why they should not put up additional capital, why they think that they're still safe, and that they'll be able to collect on the loans. The explanations are vetted by the central bank. And if these explanations are found to be unsatisfactory or unacceptable, then banks would be required to put up additional capital to make sure that should there be a drop in the real estate market, then banks would have enough capital to absorb the impact of such decline. The third source of resilience is the within target inflation that we have achieved as a country. And together with this, we have been able to maintain a strong external liquidity position. If you look at the chart, it shows that we've been running current account surpluses for over a decade now. And this has largely been due to strong overseas Filipino remittances, BPO and tourist receipts, as well as exports. The upper right-hand side of the chart shows our external debt to GDP, and this has been halved over the period 2005 to 2014. It's now in the low 20%. This has been the result of a combination of two factors. One, more active management of the country's external debt, particularly optimizing the funding opportunities domestically. So we have enough domestic liquidity. There's been a shift towards more domestic funding, particularly for the national government. And two, GDP that is growing at a healthy pace. So both numerator and denominators um, have moved in a way that has led to a reduction in the total external debt to GDP ratio. And the bottom chart shows that GIR, the gross international reserves of the country, doubled over the period indicated and is currently at about a little over $80 billion, the equivalent of 10 and a half months of imports of goods and services. So this gives us a buffer, a comfortable buffer for the impact of any external shock that may arise. Now, another bright spot for the Philippines is its financial system. This is another major area of concern of the central bank. As the slide shows, the resources of the banking system are rising. Credit growth is running at a healthy pace. The NPL ratios are declining. Capital is solid. Again, the positive alignment of indicators. These trends have resulted from market reaction to BSP regulations, which have, among others, encouraged banks to take advantage of market opportunities within risk levels that their capital can tolerate. The reforms at the same time mandated banks to increase their capital as required under Basel III. We are Basel III compliant as far as the capital adequacy requirement is concerned, starting January 1, 2014. Also to improve their risk management systems and raise their corporate governance standards. This is probably, again, the reason why Moody's has singled the Philippine banking system as the only one out of 69 jurisdictions that Moody's monitors and rates, as the only one which has been assigned a positive outlook. The fourth source of resilience is the Philippines has ample fiscal space to support growth and the reform agenda. The priorities in the 2015 national budget, which is higher by 15.1% than the 2014 budget, are first health, education, and public infrastructure. These are all priority areas that are supposed to, make growth more evenly, at least more evenly distributed throughout the economy. Finally, demographics is on our side. We are one of the youngest populations in the region. Our average is 23.5 years. We also have a big proportion of millennials in the Philippines. As you know, millennials have very distinctive characteristics. They're not only concerned about others, they're also concerned, about themselves, they're also concerned about others. So we can build on this in a positive way. And it's not just the banking system that has caught the eye of third-party assessors. The chart shows that index after index, improvements in our macroeconomic environment are being cited. And you can see how we have improved in terms of the ratings that we have received over the last few years. Even the Heritage Foundation, as mentioned by Ambassador Miller earlier, has taken notice. 2015 Index of Economic Freedom, the Philippines went up by 30 notches. So to quote your 2015 report, the Philippines has charted an upward trajectory of economic freedom for the past 5 years. Wide-ranging reforms to address structural weaknesses and improve overall economic competitiveness have put greater emphasis on improving regulatory efficiency, enhancing regional competitiveness, and liberalizing the banking sector, end of quote. The next chart shows the improvement in the credit metrics of the economy as rated by the major credit rating agencies. And we are well into investment grade territory at this point in time. Now, outlook for the economy. GDP growth is projected at 7 to 8% this year and next year. Oh, well, it's a target of government. And this is shared by international organizations. Manageable inflation, as I mentioned earlier, 2 to 4% is the target range. We're well within that, and we expect sustained current account surplus. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the reforms instituted by the Philippines over the past decades, supported by sound macroeconomic fundamentals, have turned the economy from a regional laggard into what the Center for Global Development calls the most resilient emerging market in the world. Moving forward, the benefits of the wide range of institutionalized reforms give comfort that the future of the Philippine economy will be even brighter and will be exciting, just like the forthcoming Pacquiao-Mayweather fight. Thank you all, and good day to all of you.
We're running a little bit late on time, but I think that the governor has agreed to answer some questions, so perhaps we have time for just one or two questions. Please raise your hand, and we'll bring a microphone around, and please identify yourself with your question. Shall we start in the back there, please?
Good afternoon, Governor. My name is Emerald De La Rosa, and I'm in the private sector as an investment banker. Thank you so much for giving us a very complete macro scenario of the motherland. I would like, however, to find out more on the micro side. I was made to understand that the central bank is now have reserves in different currencies. And if so, what is the percentage of each one of the top 5 currencies? Thank you.
The bulk of our reserves are held in U.S. dollars. Okay? And this is because the foreign exchange requirements of the country are basically in U.S. dollars. We have small holdings of other currencies like the yen, the euro, and the Aussie dollar. Of course, because of our relations with the IMF, we also have a small part held in SDRs. We take advantage of diversification of opportunities. And if you look at the composition of reserves, there'll be some changes from period to period, but these changes are not significant. The components and the percentages would more or less remain the same.
I'm Faith Bautista. I'm the presidency of National Asian American Coalition. I work with the Federal Reserve and OCC. There's 27 billion money being remitted in the Philippines. Most of the banks do not remit money anymore, except for Wells Fargo. FTC is really are in the forefront of this money laundering. What can we help you, or what are you doing to increase this money remittance safely for the Filipinos, and what can we do to help you to really get the community banks, the big fours, to do money remittance again?
Well, I think the first thing is that there's got to be clarity in the regulatory guidance, both coming from country authorities as well as coming from the standard-setting bodies like the FATF, the Basel Committee for Banking Supervision. I attended a meeting yesterday precisely on this subject, and we found out that the KYCC, the Know Your Customer's customer, is not really required. And some banks think That is the requirement under the new guidelines. What is required is simply the KYC, so know your customer, right? But you have to determine the robustness of the KYC system of your counterparty, like an MTO, or in the States, I think they call this MSBs, the money service businesses. But the bank doesn't need to know the counterparty's customers individually. Because, of course, if you try to reach to that level, the compliance cost would be very high, very prohibitive, and that would discourage banks from, remaining in this business. The second is there's a need to study how we can leverage on technology because I think the reaction has been because of what has happened. I mean, fines have been imposed on a number of institutions, and these are not peanuts. No, these are large amounts. So banks are now a lot more careful, but which is good. I think it's good because they're more conscious about making sure that the global financial system remains safe. But there could be unintended consequences, particularly if the regulations are not appreciated properly. That's number one. So the compliance cost, for it to be more manageable, perhaps we can look at how we can use technology to do that. Some suggestions have been in the form of using KYC utilities. So you have a platform that would gather the information and provide this to whoever needs the information of course under certain guidelines and under very robust governance standards, or use of LEIs, the legal entity identifier, which is basically a way to identify financial institutions that are involved in particular transactions. So I think we can explore that, lower the compliance cost, and make the remittance business attractive. Because the major reason is that aside from the legal risk, which is very important, by the legal risk and the risk of being penalized, the profitability angle has got to be considered as well.
I think one more question, perhaps, in the back.
Good afternoon, Governor. Thank you very much for your illuminating presentation. My name is Mitzi Picard. I'm with the U.S. Filipinos for Good Governance. I would like your comments on China's proposed AIIB, if the Philippines is planning to support or participate in that. And also, how do you see the AIIB? Do you feel that it's going to complement the Asian Development Bank or perhaps a threat? And how does this conflict with the South or West Philippine Sea conflict?
Actually, I think that's another issue, but a different issue. But the Philippines is actually seriously studying being a member and make a contribution to the AIIB. We have actually signed the document that was presented to all those countries that intend to be members. I think that was done late last year. So we're a signatory to that document. But in terms of actually making the contribution, becoming a member, that is being studied right now by the Department of Finance of the Philippines. I think, it will complement the activities of other multilaterals like the World Bank or the ADB. And more and more countries have been joining, actually, even a number of European countries.
Well, please join me in thanking Governor Tatango for his presentation.
Thank you.